Welcome back to Cliffhangers and Page Turners. You know how this works. We pick a book, we really get into it.
Yeah, exactly like a book club.
Exactly. And this week, well, we're diving into a thriller, The Crash, by Freida McFadden.
Oh, this book, it really kept me up late turning pages. McFadden's so good at creating this intricate story from two different points of view, and the way she slowly reveals the truth, I was hooked until the very end.
Okay, so for those who haven't read it yet, let's set the scene. We meet Tegan. She's pregnant after a one-night stand, and her life's definitely not a fairy tale. I mean,
Yeah.
she's dealing with money problems, a tough living situation, and then she's offered this deal by the baby's father that's kind of morally questionable. What did you think of Tegan's situation at the start?
It's really interesting, right? McFadden doesn't shy away from the hard stuff that many women face, especially with unexpected pregnancies and, struggling financially. It immediately makes you feel this tension and vulnerability that follows Tegan throughout the story.
And then things get really dark when she remembers being assaulted by Simon, the father of her child. That's a huge revelation, and it definitely shapes the choices she makes after that.
Oh, absolutely. It's a total turning point in the story. It makes you rethink your first impressions of both Tegan and Simon, right? The assault adds this whole other layer of complexity to their already complicated relationship, and it raises questions about power, and consent.
Yeah, it makes you think. And then, of course, there's the crash itself, this terrifying accident during a blizzard. She's injured alone. And then out of nowhere, this mysterious bearded stranger, Hank, shows up, appearing to offer help.
It's like a scene from a horror movie, right? The isolation, the blizzard, and then this guy suddenly appears from the darkness. It's so well done, it plays on our deepest fears and sets the stage for everything unsettling that happens next.
Unsettling is a good word for it. Tegan ends up in Hank's basement, being cared for by his wife, Polly, who was a nurse, and I gotta admit, at this point, I was already getting a little creeped out.
Oh yeah, the basement setting, no way to contact the outside world. It all creates this feeling of claustrophobia, like something bad's about to happen. McFadden is a master at building suspense. You can't help but question Hank and Polly's motives right from the start.
Right, and just when you think you're starting to figure out what's going on, bam, the story shifts to Polly's point of view. Talk about a game changer.
This is where the story gets so good. We learn about Polly's deep desire to have a child and the awful incident at the hospital that seems to have crushed her dreams of motherhood. It adds a whole new dimension to her and makes her actions, even the ones that seem caring, really complex.
I was constantly trying to figure out if she was truly trying to help Tegan or if she had something darker in mind. It was like peeling back the layers of an onion with each chapter, revealing more and more unsettling truths.
Exactly. McFadden is so clever in using Polly's point of view to challenge what we think we know. Is she a villain, a victim, or both? It's this moral ambiguity that makes her such a fascinating character.
And as we get deeper into Polly's perspective, we see how she manipulates both Tegan and her husband Hank to get what she wants. It's honestly chilling to see how she twists situations to her advantage using their vulnerabilities.
You can really see the desperation driving her every move, this overwhelming need for a child that's become distorted and unhealthy. She gets fixated on Tegan and the baby, and she starts blurring the lines between right and wrong to reach her goal.
And this, of course, creates this intense power struggle between Polly and Tegan. Tegan starts to get suspicious, realizing she's trapped, and she begins to fight for her freedom.
It becomes this battle of wills. Tegan, even though she's vulnerable, shows incredible strength and resilience against Polly's manipulation. She refuses to be a victim, and this determination fuels her fight to survive.
Let's face it, McFadden doesn't hold back on the twists and turns, the fire that Tegan starts in the basement, Polly drugging her. It all keeps you on the edge of your seat, wondering what's going to happen next.
Those plot twists are like shocks to the system, keeping the story moving so fast. But what I find even more interesting is how those twists make us face uncomfortable truths about ourselves. How far would we go to protect ourselves or the people we love? Where's the line between right and wrong when we're in extreme situations?
And what about Hank, stuck in the middle of this whole messed up situation? We see him wrestling with his conscience torn between his love for Polly and the disturbing reality of her actions.
Hank's inner struggle is like a smaller version of the ethical dilemmas that the book explores. He represents that gray area, the battle between loyalty and morality, and it's a struggle a lot of us can relate to on some level.
So we have these complicated characters, this unsettling atmosphere, and then McFadden throws us another curveball, Tegan's brother trying to kill her. It felt like the tension was about to explode.
That's what makes this book impossible to put down. Just when you think you've got it figured out, McFadden introduces another danger, changing the power dynamics again. And what's even more shocking is that Polly ends up protecting Tegan from her brother in the hospital. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about her motivations.
And that's where we'll pause for now, listeners.
Hmm.
We've set the scene, met the characters, and gotten a taste of the moral complexities that are coming up.
It's wild how McFadden uses those shocking twists, not just to keep you on the edge of your seat, but to really dig into what makes us human. It makes you stop and think about the choices we make when things get tough and where the lines between good and evil really are.
I know, right? And talking about blurry lines, let's get to how this whole crazy situation ends up. It turns out Tegan's brother was the one messing with her car, which led to the crash. And guess who was behind it all? Simon, the baby's father.
Yeah, that reveal really surprised me, but it also made a twisted kind of sense. Simon is so desperate to keep Tegan quiet and not take responsibility that he uses her own brother to do something terrible. It just shows how far some people will go to protect themselves, even if it hurts others.
And again, Polly is the one who steps in and stops Keegan's brother from hurting her even more. It really makes you think about her character all over again. Is she really capable of empathy and protecting someone, or is it just another move in her game?
It's a question that sticks with you even after you finish the book. McFadden doesn't give easy answers, and that's what makes it so thought-provoking. It pushes us to face the messy reality of how people behave and how even characters who seem bad can do good things.
And then comes the most confusing decision of all. Tegan choosing to protect Polly and Hank, even after everything they did. What did you think of that choice?
It says a lot about Tegan. Despite all the awful things she's been through, she chooses kindness over getting even. It suggests that she understands people, recognizing that Polly, even with her flaws, was driven by this deep need and a love that went wrong.
Yeah, it's like she sees a part of herself in Polly. She gets the vulnerability and how we all have the potential for darkness and light inside us. It's a powerful message about forgiveness and understanding, even when you've been betrayed.
Right, and it makes you think about justice and responsibility. Does someone always have to be punished for doing wrong? Or can real healing come from understanding and empathy, even if it means letting go of the need for revenge?
The crash doesn't give us easy answers to those questions. It leaves us thinking about what's right and wrong and the choices we make in tough situations. It's the kind of story that sticks with you long after you're done reading, making you think about how we act as humans.
And that's what makes it a perfect book for our book club discussions. It starts important conversations about people, the choices they make, and how those choices affect everyone else.
So let's hear from you, our listeners. Did Tegan make the right call in protecting Polly and Hank? How did you feel about how the story ended? Were you satisfied, or were there things left unanswered?
We want to hear your thoughts, share your reactions or questions, anything you're thinking about in the comments below.
Before we finish talking about the crash, I want to mention something that really hit home for me throughout the book, the whole idea of what it means to be a mother.
Oh yeah, motherhood is such a big part of this story, and it's shown in a really honest and complex way. You have Tegan, who's unsure about being a mom at first, then becomes so fiercely protective of her baby. And then there's Polly, who's consumed by this need to have a child, and that ends up leading her down a really dark path.
It's like McFadden is challenging the romanticized idea of motherhood,
Hmm.
showing us the real struggles, the sacrifices, the intense love, and the potential for both incredible strength and heartbreaking vulnerability.
Exactly. And it makes you ask those tough questions. What does it truly mean to be a good mother? Is it about biology providing for a child or something deeper that's hard to define?
The book doesn't give clear-cut answers, but it encourages us to think about these questions by looking at Tegan and Polly's experiences. It reminds us that motherhood is a journey, not a destination, and it's a journey shaped by what we go through, the choices we make, and the deep love we have for our children.
It also highlights the pressure and expectations that society puts on women when it comes to being a mother. Polly's desperation for a child is fueled by her loss and what society tells her she should want, which ultimately leads to her downfall. It makes you wonder how much of what she does comes from her own desires versus what society tells her she should be doing.
That's a really good point. It's like McFadden is asking us to look beyond the choices the characters make and see the bigger forces that shape those choices.
Mhm.
It adds a whole other layer to the story and encourages us to think critically about the messages we get about motherhood and what we expect from women.
And it's not just about motherhood, it's about all the choices we make in life. The crash reminds us that even seemingly small decisions can have huge effects sometimes, taking us down paths we never expected.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect. One choice leads to another, and suddenly you're facing a moral dilemma you never saw coming. It really makes you consider the impact of your actions, how important it is to think about what might happen, both the things you want to happen and the things you don't. It's like they say, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. You think you've got it all figured out, and then boom, a crash changes everything.
And it's those moments, those times of chaos, when we really see who someone is. You know, do we let fear and anger take over, or can we find a way to be understanding and kind?
And talking about kindness, we can't finish this without going back to Tegan's final decision, the one that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Why, after all that, did she choose to protect Polly and Hank?
It's the big question, right? On the surface, it doesn't make sense. I mean, they held her against her will. Polly was manipulative and did some really messed up things.
But there's something more to it, something deeper about why Tegan made that choice. Something that gets to the heart of the book.
What's interesting is that Tegan seems to get what Polly's going through, the desperation, the pressure from society, the trauma that led her to make those choices. It's not about saying what Polly did was okay, but it's about seeing that even in the worst situations, there's always a backstory. A whole bunch of things that contribute to why someone acts the way they do.
Like, she sees that Polly could change, that she could heal, and that maybe Hank could too.
And maybe by choosing compassion, Tegan is also choosing to stop the cycle of hurt and violence. She's refusing to keep the pain going.
It's powerful. It makes you think about how we deal with things when someone does us wrong. Do we want revenge, or do we try to understand and forgive?
The crash doesn't give us a simple answer, but it makes us think about these tough questions in a way that's both exciting and thought-provoking. It's a story that you keep thinking about long after you're done reading, and it makes you look at your own values and what you would do in those same tough situations.
So listeners, we're curious, what do you think about Tegan's final decision?
Tell us what you think. Share your thoughts, your struggles, anything that's on your mind in the comments below. We want to hear it all.
And before we go, I want to leave you with this. The Frash reminds us that even when life throws us curveballs, those crashes that shake us up, we always have the power to choose how we react.
We can let anger and resentment take over, or we can try to rise above that and find understanding and compassion and maybe a way to heal.
The Crash is a wild ride full of suspense and characters that will stay with you long after you close the book. It's a book that's meant to be talked about, and we hope our deep dive gave you a lot to think about.
So keep reading, keep those conversations going.
Be sure to tune in next week when we'll be reviewing Deep End by Ali Hazelwood.
You won't want to miss it.
Until then, happy reading, everyone. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Cliffhangers and Page Turners for more big discussions that feel just like your favorite book club.
Happy reading, everyone.
See you next time.